Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Clubhouse. This is our very first edition of the Clubhouse, and people are probably sitting there going, what is the Clubhouse? Anyway, so it all started with an absolutely crazy idea after we spoke last week on the spirit of cricket with my very good friend, Peter Walsh, who joins us tonight. Good evening, Walshy. How are you? And
Hello.
welcome to my Clubhouse.
Oh, mate, what a fantastic idea. Self-praise is no recommendation, but the Clubhouse offers so much because if anyone has a little inkling of being a sports person or someone who plays the game or is just a member or a supporter, they know that they've got a Clubhouse.
Exactly right. So you and I worked on this concept over the last week. There were lots of text messages, there were lots of phone calls, there were lots of emails, lots of extensive market research all around the world. And we arrived at the name, the Clubhouse, and I think it's absolutely perfect for what we're trying to achieve here. And so let's get to the point of what the Clubhouse is all about. It's going to be a weekly sports wrap brought to you by Walshy and Telf. So you and me, the master and the apprentice. I know you don't like that, but I do. But look, everyone has their own Clubhouse, Walshy, and at the end of the day's play, everyone heads back to the Clubhouse. They share stories with their teammates, the opposition. They talk about what happened in the game, what happened in sports, around Australia, around the world that day. And they celebrate and share each other's successes and failures. And I think it aligns perfectly with the spirit of cricket brand. So the other thing that we're hoping to do is we're hoping to bring a special guest in once we work out the technology and invite someone in that can share a story about their Clubhouse, or it might be, a famous international sports person that we can align. But let's go to your Clubhouse story, because, this was part of your brainchild to do this. So you've got a couple of really interesting stories that you'd like to talk about. And then once we do that, we'll then get into what the show's all about, which is a wrap on international sport, a wrap on Aussie sport, a walk down memory lane with Peter Walsh, because you've got so many stories to share, and I want to bring those to our listeners and viewers. So over to you, mate.
I digressed a little bit today. I worked out what I wanted to talk about, and that is that whenever you go to see a sport, whether you go as a spectator or you just go along and you get your mates there and you have a tinny, you love to go into the club rooms afterwards, the Clubhouse. And what I love is, I love to see the honour boards that are up to date. So you walk over and you have a look and you can see who won the best and fairest last year, who was the leading goal kicker, and anything like that. For me, that makes me feel really warm and fuzzy. Just like it will feel with Joel Selwood, who plays his 350th for Geelong, and he will go into the club rooms afterwards and be cheered, and they'll be carrying on, and so they should. For what a super player! But then they'll find their way.
Except Walshy, he plays for the Cats.
Well, I'm not going to digress there, but what I'm saying is there's always going to be a reason for players, irrespective of whether they're playing their first or whether they're playing their 350th. Well done, Joel Selwood. But my memory ticked over, and I was thinking about a golf course called Buninyong. And this was the late 70s, and I was doing some work for the local radio station, and the boss rang up and he said, can you go out and cover a golf tournament? And I said, a golf tournament normally takes 4 days. He said, no, this will only take half a day. The players that were playing were Severiano Ballesteros, who unfortunately has passed away, Greg Norman, and Johnny Miller. Now, they played 18 holes at Buninyong, and afterwards, guess where they went?
Back to the Clubhouse.
And there were so many people there, and we had such a wonderful day. And I thought to myself, not back in 1970 or whatever, but they went in, and that's where they had a quiet beer and people had the chance to get to know them. The irony is, what did happen afterwards, I thought about, what else does it mean to me about a Clubhouse? My dad played golf in Hobart, and he played golf with a fellow called Roger Mackay. Now, Dad played on this particular day as the amateur in a 4, and it was the Tassie Open. First round was going to be the following day. Dad got blown over because of the breeze that was blowing on the 3rd at the Tasmanian Open. And he came back to the clubhouse with Roger Mackay, who introduced his mate Jack Walsh to everyone and said, I'm so glad that Jack has been able to get to his feet and come back with me to the clubhouse and have a beer. So it's a meeting place.
It is indeed.
That's what I think it is, where you go there and you have a reason for celebrating or for consoling your best mates or your supporters from opposition. But the stories there are fruitful.
They are indeed. And that leads me into my story and my clubhouse. This one here behind me is probably one of the most amazing clubhouses that I've ever been into. And it belongs to the Singapore Cricket Club. And it's a meeting place. The grass in front is not the cricket ground, it's the tennis courts. And the tennis courts are between the clubhouse and the playing surface of the oval. But I met there with a very good friend of mine, Sandhu, and we were introduced to the club coach, the club president, the cricket captain, and we spent a day there. We took cricket training with the kids, and then we went and trained under lights with their senior team, and it was just an absolutely amazing night. Some of the memorabilia in the clubhouse at the Singapore Cricket Club will blow people away. There's photos and signed illustrations of Bradman. Sobers is there, and many other international cricketers that have been there, along with international tennis players as well. Don't forget, because there's a tennis court at the front. So that's my memory of the clubhouse. And one of the things that we want to do, Walshy, is we'd like our viewers to share a photo of their clubhouse and their story, and we'll put it on our screen, and it will be in their clubhouse next week. And we'll do that on a rotating basis to give their clubhouse and their story a bit of promotion. So I think that's
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a Hawthorn cap on for the main reason is that I'm a Hawthorn supporter. But last week we touched on Glenferrie Oval, and I remember vividly being there and taking little happy snaps. And cameras in those days were a little different than the cameras that we have on our phones. And I kept them forever. And that's what I think. Nostalgia is not just a thing of the past. Nostalgia can remain with you forever. Take a happy snap, have a look at it, and even if you can take someone in that happy snap who has something to do with the sporting club that you're at.
Exactly right, Walshy. Well said. And look, let's get the program and the show underway. Let's go for the first quarter of the clubhouse tonight, and let's have a look at our international sports wrap. And I think what we should do is we should acknowledge what a tremendous performance it was by Cameron Smith to win the British Open. And no doubt he filled that claret jug with quite a number of beers back at the clubhouse.
Well, what's going to happen in his life is it will change forever. He now has become firmly established on front and back newspapers throughout the world for the sizzling performance in that last round of running amok on a golf course and rattling off birdie after birdie after birdie, 5 in a row, to grab hold of the win, to grab hold of the jug, and to make sure that it might be a fairly basic name, Cam Smith, but it will be remembered forever. Congratulations to he, and may there be many, many more responsible performances on a golf course like Cam, particularly if he can play some more golf in Australia.
And I love his mullet. It's a great addition to his game. I think it's helped him with the chip-ins and the putting that we saw in the British Open. So well done to you, Cam. Hey, Tour de France done and dusted for another year.
It was. Australians know in terms of how they performed the Tour de France. It was 1, 2, and 3 for overseas cyclists. But what we did see from Australia's point of view, we saw 2 of our cyclists who actually won stages, but the women are on now, and we've seen excerpts from some of our TV news overnight about carnage. They were smashed by the ridiculous speeds they were going at 1 million miles an hour. And the good thing about it, Telf, and there are lots of good things about it, this women's tour is back on the agenda after 33 years. They didn't have it. So now they have, and let's see how the Australians will perform. We'll be able to give our viewers on our coverage of sport each week how they're performing, what's going on. But it was not surprising. We saw Simon Clark get stage 5 and Michael Matthews get stage 14 as wins. But Jonas Vingegaard, the Danish cyclist, 25 years of age, he won from Tarjas Pogacar, who won last year and the year before, and Geraint Thomas was in 3rd spot. The Australians bowled, but got belted about a fair bit and got a lot of gravel rash.
Hey, that reminds me of the day that you spoke about last week when you had to practice the pronunciation of all the Sri Lankan Test cricketers. What a wonderful job you just did there on the cyclists for the Tour de France. Well done to you.
No, so quickly.
Yeah, you get away with it then. Hey, the next thing on the international agenda is obviously the Commonwealth Games, and everyone's talking about it here in Australia. The opening ceremony. And you've done a number of those. That's going to be obviously the highlight over the next couple of days. It kicks off at 4:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so in the wee hours of the morning. So I'm sure for those die-hard Commonwealth Games followers will be up early watching it, or they'll probably catch replays throughout the course of the day. But you've done a number of opening ceremonies. You've done a number of Commonwealth Games and commentated on a lot of sport there. Obviously, we'll get to the cricket part of it shortly. But what are you looking forward to from the Commonwealth Games over the next few weeks?
I think the best thing that's come out of it is in the last 24 hours about how those that have been waiting for so long have decided, yes, we have an ownership. Birmingham will say, we've got 1 million tickets that have already been sold. We're going to see the swimming. We're going to see the athletics, but we're going to see the cricket. We're going to see the hockey. We're going to see the netball. We're going to see the wrestling. I could just roll and roll and roll with all of these sports. And I think it's wonderful. And we've had this feeling before about an ownership of the Commonwealth Games. And I'm just wondering who the Australians will send out to walk into the stadium with the flag.
Surely you've got a favourite.
Oh, look.
Or is there too many to choose from?
Look, there could be, and this is a very, very dangerous word that I'm using, and I'm apologising in advance. If it's someone that's obscure who might have been to 2 or 3 previous Commonwealth Games, well for him or well for her.
Exactly.
It might not be a swimmer. It might not be an athlete. I don't know. That's a soft answer to what's a fairly relevant question. I think I'll just wait until 3:45 on Friday morning, give you a ring and say, did you get what we thought was going to be the one?
I don't
think it'll be?
Look, I have no idea at this stage, and I'm sure I know that the Commonwealth Games organisation, they normally announce who's going to carry the flag beforehand anyway. So I would think over the next 24 hours that they'll come to the party and let us all know who's going to get the honour. So looking forward to that. So that's the Commonwealth Games. Let's now divulge a little bit and into some Aussie sport. And we're both avid AFL followers, and you've obviously brought your props along tonight with your Hawthorn cap and your coloured shirt. So you've shown your colours very early on in the piece, but for all those people that are wondering who I support, I actually also support the Hawks. So there may be some bias in this show in our clubhouse. It is our clubhouse, so I think it's only fair that we do cover a little bit of the Hawthorn stuff. But let's talk about Billy Picken, who we lost during the week, unfortunately, and a very obviously a close friend of yours who you've known over the journey.
Telf, when we are talking with sadness about the loss of a close friend, we seem to be doing that too often of late. About our cricketers, and I won't mention names because they are still very raw in our thoughts. Hawthorn's lost a premiership player in Paul Deere, and they've lost a Ray Gunston, who was a wonderful administrator for Essendon and for Hawthorn. But for Billy Picken, my memories are so rich and rewarding. For me as a broadcaster, I broadcast the 1979 grand final, and Carlton defeated Collingwood by 5 points. And then the 1981 grand final, Billy Picken played in lots of grand finals, but never in a winning grand final. And when he'd finished playing with Collingwood, he went to the Sydney Swans, and he played with the Sydney Swans. And then in the late 80s, he went to Tasmania. And that's where we rekindled our very strong friendship, because he was involved coaching a club called Clarence, which rather ironically was the club that Jack Revolt played with before he went to Richmond. And he was lovable Billy. What he used to do was, and I won't talk too long about this, what he did, Telf, was he used to broadcast when he was playing. So at centre half back, number 25, he'd be running for the ball and he'd be saying, Billy Pickett's coming in to go for the big mark. Mark McClure's there. Up goes Billy and takes the mark. He was calling when he was playing. And that's what he used to do. And Mark McClure, whether you like him or not, he spoke magnificently about Billy. He said, you couldn't help but like him, but you knew he was coming because you could hear him broadcasting. And it was
so was he like that in when he played VFL footy?
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Absolutely. He just did not. He took more than I did. Now, that's a worry.
That is.
He just rattled it off. And what happened was, at the age of 66, last Saturday, we lost Billy. I rang Mark Browning straight away. He's a good mate of mine up in Queensland. He works for the Quaffle. And he was a good mate of Billy's because he also went to Tasmania and coached Hobart. And he said, Walshy, he's the same age as I am, 66. He was just a super person. I don't know what's happened to him. That's not for us to speculate. But I've lost a significant friend because what I did was I maintained contact. We were always picking up the phone, swapping a few jokes, blah, blah, blah.
I reckon you were probably chasing a few tips too, I'd say.
Well, he was Hamilton Race Club as a secretary. And look, Connie Britt was the other one, the other Collingwood player. Connie played football a block and a half away from where I was born. There's an oval down there, and Des Tuddenham played in the same team for YCW, the Young Christian Workers. And Des is still about, but Con's not. And look, you know, we talked about this and we were wondering about what we should or shouldn't say, but to Julie and the boys and to all of those in this massive Collingwood family, and I say that with the utmost respect, they are a monstrous supporting club. We've lost Billy Pick and Connie Britt, two more, and it's so sad.
Yeah, it is indeed. Well, let's finish on a positive note in reference to the Collingwood Footy Club. And I don't watch many Collingwood games, I'll be honest, but I watched the game last week, and I watched Jamie Elliott take that mark after the siren to then go back and the poise of the man to say, I'm owning this and I'm going to kick the goal, and to put it straight through the middle from an impossible angle from 50. He must have been out on the 50-metre mark, and didn't even blink an eyelid, even when the siren went, when he didn't hear the siren, apparently. What a performance.
Mate, you've described that brilliantly, because I heard one of the umpires today on another radio station talking about the countdown as to how long you've got, and if you're going to be too long from that 30-second clock, the umpire's got to count you right in. He looked composed, as you said. And I must admit, I didn't see it. I was in a car and I heard the result. It was hard to pick up on the radio because the car reverberated. There was that much noise, but you knew as soon as the result was announced and you heard, good old Collingwood forever. 9 in a row.
I know.
For Collingwood. How good are they progressing? And I should add now, because we've got some information, the AFL have released the draw for the final round. And the big one is Collingwood and Carlton, Sunday afternoon. That'll be the last of the minor rounds. It's the Richard Pratt Cup for the 13th year. That's awareness for the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre, supporting men's cancer, in particular prostate cancer. What a way for both of those teams who'll play finals to move into that last week.
Well, look, you currently look at Collingwood and they're in the top 4. So, you know, they're a premiership contender, Walshy. There's no doubt about that. And the way they're playing at the moment, nine on the trot. You have a look at the other end of the scale, and you've got St Kilda, who've lost so many on the trot. They were in the top 3, and now they're going to struggle to make the 8.
Well, Telf, gamble carefully. I will say this now with as much confidence as I've had for a long, long time, and I don't normally have a punt in football. I think Geelong are dead set certainties. I really mean that. They get Stewart back.
To finish in the top 4?
No, to win. I reckon they'll stay on top.
Oh, dear.
And they haven't won for a long time. It's been 2011.
Okay.
And I just think now they've got Cameron's up forward. They've got Big Hawkins is up forward. They've got, for me, it's time. And I reckon the Crazy Cats, the Pussycats from Special K Country, Gadinia Park, might be able to have a win.
You don't think they're peaking too early? There's still, 4 minor rounds to go.
No, I just think that they've worked it beautifully this time round. And if you look at who the sides are that are about to place, Melbourne's had the speed wobbles. Brisbane can't win at the MCG. I don't think the Dockers are that good. Fife is a massive blow with hamstring strains.
Isn't it?
And then when you look at the next 4, Collingwood's been wonderful, but I don't think that they'd be good enough to bring home the bacon.
Well, I went on to the AFL Ladder Predictor, and
I'm listening to this very carefully, by the way.
I've actually got I've got Geelong sitting on top. In fact, I've got them sitting on top with 72 points. So they're actually 8 points in front, 2 games in front of Melbourne. So Melbourne will finish second. I've got the Brisbane Lions in 3rd place on percentage from Melbourne.
Yep.
And then I've got the Sydney Swans in 4th place on percentage from Melbourne and the Lions. Collingwood slip to 5th is how I see it, with Carlton beating them in the last game.
On that Sunday. Oh, okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I see Fremantle finishing 6th, the Carlton Footy Club 7th, and the Tigers finishing 8th.
You still think Richmond will get in?
I think Richmond will get in. I think the Bulldogs will drop too many games and they'll drop out of the 8. And Essendon won't play finals again, which is
good luck.
That's my top 8. But who knows?
It's very tough, isn't it? Very, very tough indeed. But the sides that finish in the top 4 with the double chance, I reckon they'll be the ones that. And we might just keep a tab on how you're progressing each week, whether or not you're stumbling or you're looking like you're staying ahead of the play.
We'll give it our best shot, hey? Hey,
okay.
One final thing on AFL before we get on to our next segment. Your hat, the Hawks, my hat, obviously I'm not wearing it tonight, but I better bring it along next week. I might bring a beanie along next week. Sammy Mitchell, first year at the Hawks. What's his report card look like, Walshy?
7 wins. Looks all right. I reckon they've got some tough decisions. I don't want to be too incestuous about this program because it's not just about Hawthorn, but
oh, yes, it is.
I think they're going to have to make some really, really tough calls. I think Chad Wingard, for example, has been with the Hawks for a couple of years and a lot of injuries. I just don't know whether they'll hang on to him or they'll look to sort of trade him off whilst he's got some value. But if you're a Hawthorn supporter, despite not having won a lot of those close games, I think you'd be pretty pleased. And just going ahead one little bit, the side that I'd love to be barracking for now, even though I'm not a big fan of them, Carlton, the big improvers, without doubt. Oh. They're the ones that are running along. So, yeah, that's my thought.
Very good. Hey, so Aleister Clarkson has been out in limbo for 12 months or so now. Where do you think he's going to land?
Oh, look, I'd still be surprised if he coaches. I know that it was reported that James Henderson, who is his promoter or his manager, he was down in Hobart on the weekend when Hawthorn played North Melbourne at Bellerive, and he was talking to Susan Pratt from North Melbourne about Aleister Clarkson. That was common knowledge. Ricky Ponting could be involved because Ricky Ponting, of course, is a very keen North Melbourne supporter. But I just sort of have this feeling, Telf, but Aleister Clarkson's got such an impressive record. He'd be wanting to go, you would think, to a team where he might get some reasonable draft choices. They might be about the place next year. And I don't think that's going to be the case with North Melbourne. So I just feel that he might decide no.
Yeah, keep in mind, though, obviously that's where he started his VFL career. with the Kangaroos, and he may want to go home and finish off his football career as a premiership coach at the club where he started.
He might want to coach Conniver.
Well, you can tell us a story about the Conniver pub, can't you?
That's another day. That's another
day.
There's still GWS. Leon Cameron's moved on. We don't know officially about some other clubs. I know Adam Simpson, he's had a shocker with the West Coast Eagles. So there might be some other possibilities, but it'll be a watch this space. But the decisions will have to be made soon, so that those that are involved on the selection committees and those that are involved in picking out who the players are that they want for the following year, they have to make those choices.
Yeah. Hey, just wanted to mention before we get off football that you are actually listening to Walshy and Telf, and we are in the clubhouse. That's what this show's all about. It's not the spirit of cricket, it is the clubhouse. And we will be going live to air every Wednesday night, and we will be doing a wrap on the week's sport and then looking at the sport that's coming up. And Walshy's going to join me every week to do that. So thanks, mate, for being a part of my crazy dreams.
No, it's a good dream. It's a good dream. And I want people who are listening, who get a little bit of a buzz, let us know what your favourite clubhouse is.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a guarantee it'll be a sports one, but let us know. And if you've got a happy snap, we'd love to be able to promote it and mention who it's come from.
Exactly. And a story that comes with the photo. Every clubhouse has a great story. So we're really wanting to get behind our local clubhouses. Let's now go across to cricket. And obviously we've got the Commonwealth Games. We've got the Aussies playing in the Commonwealth Games for the first time. So our ladies are going to be chasing gold, and they've made it quite obvious that, they are chasing gold and they're only going there for one reason. So their schedule looks like it's an interesting one. That probably the toughest game they have will be first up, which is on July the 29th. So that'll be Friday night at 11 a.m. or Friday morning at 11 a.m. Where they take on India. So if they get through that one, then I would think that they're probably a big chance to go through to the semi-final. But they've got Barbados on July the 31st, which is an interesting concept to get your head around, Walshy, that Barbados are a Commonwealth country, but there's not a team representing the West Indies. So that's I guess an abnormality here with the Commonwealth Games, but it adds obviously extra culture, extra spice to the Commonwealth Games. And then they play Pakistan as well on August the 3rd, and then there's the semi-finals, and then the bronze medal and gold medal match. So
what we're looking at too is we're looking at the possibilities of more Australians playing and wearing the Australian colours at events like the Commonwealth Games. And it's like with the netball team that lost at the last Commonwealth Games, they'd be very keen to get back and have a win. But the pride that all of these players would have when they march grandly and proudly onto the playing surfaces over in Birmingham, what a thrill that would be. And I know you absolutely love your cricket. There'd be just as much of a buzz of those that are playing cricket as for those that are playing in any discipline whatsoever because they're playing for Australia.
Oh, exactly. And, we talked very briefly about the opening ceremony. It's going to be, spine tingling stuff for some of those people that have, represented their country before, but this time they're representing their country at a Commonwealth Games. So we're looking forward to following all of our Aussie athletes, both male and female, over the next couple of weeks.
Well, Telf, there's 435 athletes. It's the second largest contingent behind the Gold Coast, which was 473 in 2018. 231 females, 203 males, 76 para sports members, 8 guides and pilots, and we're very careful and conscious about them being there and so vital to render assistance to the athletes that they're looking after. 14-year-old Charlie Petrov is the youngest competitor. He's a diver. And the 63-year-old Queensland lawn bowler, Cheryl Linfield, she flies the flag at 63 years of age. Everyone, and this is not a trite comment, I'm really important in saying this, everybody deserves to be congratulated for just making the Games and being fated when they come back, and lots of pats on the back and well done to all.
You know what we might do, Walsh, I was just thinking about it then, is we might have a clubhouse champion from the Commonwealth Games. We might get our heads together and see if we can identify who that clubhouse champion is. And it may not be the person that wins all of the gold medals. It might be someone that's, got a personal best, competing in their chosen sport. So let's look forward to something like that at the end of it. But let's go back to the Aussies. One of the very interesting stats that I've come across this week is the stat of Talia McGrath. And we all know, Elise Perry and what's happened to her over the last couple of years and the demise, I guess, in her ability to both bowl and bat with the injuries that she's been sustaining. And we're wondering, they were massive, shoes to fill. But Talia McGrath seems to have just taken the bit between her teeth, and she has stepped in without blinking an eyelid. And she's played 4 T20 matches. She scored 247 runs. She hasn't been dismissed, and she has an average of 247. But on top of that, she's been the player of the game or the player of the match in each of those 4 games.
Oh, it's incredible. Like, you've done your homework and you've come up with those stats, and you think to yourself, where did she come from? What was that Peter Sarstedt song? Where did you go through, my lovely? When you're alone in your bed, tell me the thoughts that surround you. I want to look inside your head. She is a superstar.
Yeah.
She's getting the runs. She's doing everything necessary. And now she moves to another stage and the possibility of breaking into the side that was the world champions. And that is breathtaking, I think.
Yeah.
Congratulations to her for doing what she wants to do and doing it so well.
And you know what? She's a South Australian.
Well, so she should be, if that makes
sense. So that's something to look forward to, and obviously we'll be following all of the ladies and their performances through the next 3 or 4 games, and hopefully we get to play in that gold medal match on the 7th of August. So another announcement during the week: Lords has been awarded the hosting rights of the ICC World Test Championship final for 2023 and 2025. So obviously that's locked and loaded. They hosted the first final between India and New Zealand. So I'm sure the Aussie guys will be looking to try and make sure they get to that.
Are you of the belief, and now this is tinged with sadness here because we lost a wonderful friend, Keith Bradshaw, who was over at Lords for a period of time and then back at the Adelaide Oval, and Keith passed away.
Yeah.
Do you think Lords, is that a surprise to you? Is it because it's Lords, or because it's the best venue, or because Lords just has so much to offer? It means the world of cricket. It does over in England.
Yeah,
but were you surprised with that announcement?
Oh, look, I wasn't surprised because of obviously the history involved in Test cricket, and it is the Test cricket final. So it's to identify the number 1 Test playing country. So I'm not surprised, but I was probably more disappointed that the ICC didn't look to share that somewhere else. And look, I'm thinking of some of the great grounds around the world, and obviously the MCG is probably one of the most iconic grounds outside of Lords.
Without doubt,
that could host something like that. So I would hope that in future years, when the ICC sits down to a point, I hope they look outside the box and start to share it, and that will keep that passion going with Test cricket. So that's my belief, and I guess the reason I brought that up is I wanted to know if you'd ever been to Lords, Walshy.
I've been to Lords, but not to watch any cricket. It's a bit like Old Trafford.
Yeah.
I was over in Old Trafford when Manchester Commonwealth Games were on in 2004. And I walked across the road from Manchester United and I thought, what's this ground? Seriously, I did not know. And I walked in and I sat down and there was a county match that was underway. And then I realised where I was. But it needed a coat of paint for a start.
Yeah.
And I just sat there and I thought, no, this is not something that I'm really, really loving. And so that was my experience. Old Trafford, but didn't go and see anything that happened. And you?
No, I've never been to England. So that's in my bucket list to get to England. And obviously I'd love to go over there and play a little bit of cricket and, go on a bit of a tour and obviously align it so that it's an Ashes tour. So that that's on the bucket list, Walshy. So when we
That's
get
good.
when we get a sponsor for the clubhouse, I'll be able to afford to go over there. But yeah.
Well, why don't you give Disney Star a call? Because they got a bit of money floating around. Disney Star. God, what?
Go on.
The rights to broadcast all men's and women's international cricket played in Australia into India on a 7-year deal commencing 23-24. The dollars are floating, and it didn't come as any major surprise because it got runs in the news today, etc., etc. But it's a pretty big one, isn't it?
250 million. Yeah. I might actually contact Disney Star and see if they can throw us $500,000.
Oh, that's big. That is massive.
It is massive. I guess I'd like to get your thoughts on that while we're talking about that, Walsh, is that obviously you come from an ABC background where all sport was free to air to the public. I'm wondering if this is going to have an impact on free to air television of cricket here in Australia. And if it does, what does that mean to the game?
Oh, look, that's a very good question. It has to have some effect. There's no question about it. And with my work at the ABC, you turned up because you knew that you're okay to do the cricket or do the football or virtually do anything. And the rights that we had to fork out were minuscule, and yet to our right, there was a commercial station who had to bid for the football and bid for the cricket, anything like that. And this to me now, this speaks of leading up until, what have we got, 23, 24, up until 7 years away. Who would know what we can watch on television? Even now, we are limited with what is available on television. And if you haven't got all of those wheels of fortune in front of you where you can dial here or dial there, you don't see what you want to see. And it's just the changing world that will continue to change.
It will indeed. And that leads us on to the BBL signing and the draft that's coming up. I think there's 180 international players that have nominated for BBL this year, and there's 90 Australians, and I'm not even sure what the final numbers are across all of the franchises, but I spoke with Jason Gillespie today, and they're obviously putting their plans in place for the strikers, and they're formulating their squad and their tactics that they're looking to undertake for the 28th of August, which is draft day. So that's going to be a massive day in the WBBL, and will be interesting to see which players get retained and which players, get outbid and move on to other franchises.
Well, we've got the Melbourne Renegades, Melbourne Stars, Brisbane Heat, Sydney Sixers, Adelaide Strikers, Perth Scorchers, Sydney Thunder, and Hobart Hurricanes. And the comment made about the Hobart Hurricanes was, Ricky Ponting's looking after them, but he has to wait because their first pick is the 8th pick. So every other club of the 8 teams that I've just mentioned, they have a bite at the carrot, and then those that are waiting have to pick up what's left. And if you love your BBL, and I like it for a short period of time. I don't like it all the time, but obviously the monies that are being thrown out are fairly lucrative, to say the least.
Oh, look, I hope it's sustainable what they're doing this year, and I think and I talk to a lot of people that are either haters or lovers of BBL, but everyone that I speak to is all about that the season's far too long. And I think it's now got to the point where, and this is my opinion, I think it's got to the point where it's more about the money and the television rights and what that means to Cricket Australia than the actual cricket itself. Unfortunately, I think that's where it's at. So
no, it's a good call. I just don't like putting a watermelon on my head when I go into the cricket to sit down and watch. That's all.
or a KFC bucket.
True.
I'd love to see that in the members at the Adelaide Oval one day. Walshy with a watermelon head.
Yes.
The draft is happening obviously in the BBL, but it's also happening in the Silverbacks over 50s, which is happening here in Adelaide. And our draft night is the 12th of August. Now, we don't have 180 international signings, but we do have 70 players who have nominated, and
that's good.
There'll be 60 players that are selected into our 4 franchises, and that will happen at the Bar Hotel on Friday, the 12th of August. And
is that a clubhouse?
that is, well, it can be our clubhouse.
Well, you are.
The Bar Clubhouse for the Silverbacks Premier League. I love it. Maybe they'll sponsor us. Who knows? But look, it's something that's really exciting. We're doing it for the second year, and there's a couple of games in Mildura. And then there's round 3 back here in Adelaide, and then the final here in Adelaide as well. And then we lead into the over 50s nationals, and the Silverbacks will be putting in, I think it's 6 teams into the national competition. So we're aiming to go a lot better than what we did previously at previous nationals. So looking forward to the next 3 months of cricket, and where it's going to be a very busy time, I'm sure. And I know, Walshy, you're going to be a part of the nationals, and hopefully get you back into Adelaide and be a part of that week of festivities.
I'm looking forward to it very much. Now, can I please be a little indulgent? I want to make mention of one sport that I was involved in at a Commonwealth Games, and I will remember it forever. And it was 2006 in Melbourne. It was the running of the women's marathon, and Australia significantly represented by Karen McCann, who was emblazoned with the number 1108 on her Aussie top, and she went in as favourite. The Kenyan performer, the steam train, was Helen Shirono Kosika, and those two had one of the most absorbing battles that I have ever witnessed. 42K, and the destination was the middle of the MCG. The race twists and turned, and who was going to get away, who was going to lead. And when they got to within 1K of the stadium, there was 1 metre between the two of them.
I remember it well.
Oh, it was pulsating. I wanted, of course, Karen McCann. The Kenyans, and there weren't a massive lot that were cheering, but the whole crowd, in this cacophony of noise, when they ran into the MCG, shoulder to shoulder. I was sharing the commentary with David Morrow, who was at that stage then with the ABC, and they broke into a virtual sprint at the 300-metre mark. How dare they sprint? After 41.5K, they turned for home. Blood, perspiration, the whole lot was just spluttering from her face. That's McCann. She got away to lead by 1 metre. She got away to lead by 2. And the crowd stood like it was at an AFL Grand Final and cheered when Karen won by 2 seconds. 2 seconds, 2 hours, 30 minutes, 54 to 2 hours, 30, 52. She collapsed, was picked up by her husband, wandered around, had enough to wave. And I walked away and I thought to myself, that is pure intestinal fortitude at the highest level. It's one of the most breathtaking sporting events I've ever seen. And she passed away 2 years later with cancer. 2 years later, Karen McCann, 1108, that was your number. You're a gold medalist. You are a star.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Walshy. I'll be honest, I didn't actually realise she'd passed away. That we've talked about this story for a number of days, and wow, that's gut-wrenching, isn't it? For someone to be so healthy and then 2 years later to not be with us is absolutely gut-wrenching. So, right, thanks for that. Where do you want to go now, Walshy? Do you want to pull up stumps for episode number 1? Have you got anything else you want to share with us?
Yeah, what we need to do, and this is not a broken record, but what we're doing is we're sitting and we're chatting away about the things that we hope that our punters who are taking notice of what's going on are liking what we're saying. If they want to suggest something different or some obscure sport where somebody might have done something out of the ordinary, we'll mention those people. And we'll mention also the clubhouses where you like to frequent. And that's what it's all about. It is an information sharing program, and we need the punters out there to do just that.
And it's a bit of fun as well, Walshy. You know, there's obviously some serious things that we talked about tonight, but there was also some fun stuff that we also joked about as well. So that's what the show is going to be about. It's going to be also reliving some of the memories that you've had from your many years of broadcasting sports of all sorts. And every week we'll bring another Walshy story and a Walshy moment to our clubhouse. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where that's going to go. So thank you for your time tonight. It's probably dinner time over there in Victoria, is it? Or is it bedtime for you?
No, it's time for you to change that shirt, so I'll send you a decent one. You can wear a coloured one this week, okay?
Okay, and while we're talking about the coloured shirts, we actually didn't even talk about that tonight. Tell us very quickly before we go about what the coloured shirt is all about.
Well, there are two reasons. One is Glenn McGrath, who I had the fortune of getting to know back in 1994 in Pakistan, in a hotel room in a place called Peshawar. We chatted and he talked about, at that stage, Jane was still alive, and he talked about pink and the pink test at the Adelaide Oval, the pink ball, the pink ear. And I got to know Jane, and unfortunately we lost Jane, and got to know Tracy Bevan and Michael Bevan, who are very much supporters of the McGrath Foundation. And they just want people to become aware of the fact that you check your breasts as regularly as is possible. You need to do that. Don't mess around, don't take a risk. And that was the pink. And the blue was, I've lost too many friends who passed away with prostate cancer. Teddy Whitten passed away at 62, never got checked. And the blue is for prostate. And I'm very careful and cautious as to how I put this across. Telf, you don't have to do anything except a blood test. That's it. There used to be some invasive type procedures. They don't exist anymore. You take a blood test and you then get sorted, and you then are aware of the fact that you find a urologist, and there are some magnificent people around. I've got an absolute ripper. His name is Andrew Fuller, and I contact him all the time. I spoke to David Parkin yesterday. David's going through some issues. Get a urologist who knows his stuff and work hard. Blue is for prostate cancer, and
pink is for breast.
It's for breast cancer.
Thanks, Walshy. Thank you, everyone, for listening to edition number 1 of the Clubhouse, and we're looking forward to bringing it to you again next week, same time, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, with Walshy and Telf at the Clubhouse. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Walshy.
Thanks, Telf. Have a good week.
Talk soon. Bye.